I am so glad today to have with us Jacki Carr. Jacki is a speaker, a leader, a teacher, a guide. She is a lovely writer who I recommend you follow. Jacki is someone I've been following through life for 13 years, and I've gotten to watch the iterations of her work and life change. And today I'm so excited to talk about some of that with her. When I was sharing about motivation, I thought about Jacki a lot because of her work with goals and how that has changed for her over time. And today, I welcome her to share more with us. Thanks, Jacki.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here through all the different evolutions and iterations of connection. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
having me and talking about
Yeah.
motivation and goals. Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, Jacki, I would love to just hear where you are now, from where you came from to get where you are in the work that you're doing in your life and with your people and coaching and in your vulnerability groups when it comes to how you frame goals, because
Yeah.
they're a huge thing for some people and others. I think there's a reticence or a resistance to the concept of goals. So how
Yeah.
do you frame them for yourself today?
Yeah. I was born and raised in Texas. My family moved from the Midwest down to Texas. And I was definitely like very much placed in dance into specifically athletics. So it was like, what they talk about. I think they talk about with like football players. It's like dance will help their movement. And
Mhm.
same for me. I remember doing dance, 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 and then it was all sports, sports, sports. And, you learn goal setting through athletics. You're working with a team, you're working with your body, you're exploring competition. And I think that was really my identity for so long, like through high school. And then college, I really turned a lot of that on its head. I didn't play sports in college. And I definitely changed majors like every year as I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out what I was interested in, what mattered to me. And then I moved out to California. So I actually went to school in the Midwest, moved out to California, and I worked for Lululemon, which it sounds is like where we crossed
Yeah.
paths.
Yeah.
Yep. And I got introduced to vision and goal setting, the language of vision and goal setting there.
Hmm.
Very intertwined, like way back in the day. They don't have it anymore, but our goals used to be like framed in the stores.
Yes, yes. Now, so for those who don't know, I took a departure from working in therapy long ago. I guess it was probably about 12 years ago, thinking I would never go back again because I was so burnt out and, in a way, traumatized by the work that I was doing for several years. And I went and worked at Lululemon part time while I was deciding what I was going to do. And yes, we set goals. And I have to say that I'm a person who, though I was an athlete, I never really felt like I was the great athlete. I was there more for like the social. I was like the captain, but I wasn't a competitive person. So goals weren't really a part of my life in a way that I could relate to them until then.
Yeah.
And I loved the work that they would do with us. It's such an interesting employee approach. We all would do visualizations of our life and where we wanted to go. The idea wasn't that we stay there. The idea is that we were constantly like holding each other up for all the other things that we wanted to do, whether it was a yoga teacher training or something completely unrelated to the work we were doing. And it was really actually very inspiring and really fun, and I
Yeah.
needed it back then.
Me too. I would say my 20s were very much shaped by my life at Lululemon. I did work there until age 30 is when I
Mhm.
left Lululemon. So my 20s were really spandex. I will say caveat, like as you're sharing some of the goals of yoga teacher training, running a marathon,
Yeah.
I worked for the woman that led vision and goals at Lululemon, and I lived near her, and any time I could shadow her, I would. So I would, knock on her door. Can I do extra work for you? I'll work for free, right? I was so inspired by her. And I remember going through like a huge goal folder. So I would help her um, categorize the people she was coaching. And then we had these goal sheets. So I remember this huge binder. And then I would put them in alphabetical order or by store or by state, whatever. Anyways, it is funny though, like when you're in this container, right? Like
Yeah.
Lululemon definitely lends itself to people who love to move, breathe, maybe a little woo-woo, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Some of the goals, though, did start to look the same. And I do think that's tricky when you work at a
Oh
place
yeah.
where you're all wearing the same thing. You're saying the same thing. You're training for a marathon, and then I'm doing my yoga teacher training. And I do find that fascinating, when you're in community.
Yeah.
And there were so many goals that I did. Like I ran a full marathon and I'm good. I mean, Ash, I
Yeah.
never need to run one again. And I did it and I'm glad I did. And it was an amazing experience. And I will never run 26 point. I mean, I guess never say never, but it doesn't
Oh,
feel
I
like
can tell you,
it doesn't feel like a yes.
I do not have interest in it, but I will tell you that there was a long period of time in my life I thought I'd be a better person if I did. And I think that that's kind of like, looking at each other's pieces of paper and going, maybe I should do that. Should I do that? How would I feel if I did that? Would I feel better about myself? I think for a lot of my life, the things that I thought I should do, I thought would make me feel better about myself. And it's not a bad thing. But
No,
I
no.
definitely thought if I ran a marathon, I'd be a better person.
Yeah.
And I no longer wish to run a marathon.
That's cool about goal setting, right? You get to do goals and
Change
then
it up.
never do them again. You get to
Yeah.
keep doing them. And then I met Suzanne Conrad, who her title at Lululemon was the director of possibility. And I was like, oh, I want to be that. I want that business
I
card. And
want that. I want that now. I'm going to make that my
I
title.
am that.
Director of possibility. I
Yeah.
feel like that is what I do. Okay,
Then
going.
just own it. So yes, I worked there for a long time. It was a great intro to vision and goals. And oh my gosh, it was such a good intro in so many ways, like being out of balance with your goals. I burnt out in my career and I like forgot about my personal life. And I was writing my personal goals down. I just never did them. So it was really fascinating. But ooh, I went too far. I went too far.
Yeah.
I like drank the Kool-Aid and spiked it. And that's one thing I think about in regards to Vivek Murthy writes a lot about loneliness in our society now. And, we could talk about our days at Lululemon with like-minded people and probably friends we still have from that life.
Yeah.
I watch The Office sometimes on repeat when I need a minute. And where are we meeting people and standing around a water cooler? And so I do think about our existence now with so much accessibility to tech, or I read a lot. I love all the people that get groceries delivered and DoorDash. And I'm like, wow, look at how much our lives have changed.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
look at how much we're not perhaps talking to one another. And I worry about that. And so I think that's bringing us more into the present moment where I left Lululemon. I became a coach and consultant and I lead retreats and I write. I've always had some iteration of a blog with a different title. And I do have a goal to write a book. But at this point, I've built companies, I've closed companies. I coach mostly really fast-paced type A or women that once labeled themselves as type A, but are
Yeah.
looking for a little bit of balance in that language and not perfect balance. That's not what I mean, but the
Yeah.
pendulum swinging balance back and forth. And I lead retreats so people can come together and be human
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And, you know, this brings perfectly to the language you were just asking me about. How do I define goals? And goals, for me, it's a desired outcome, a desired result, right? And I do like putting timestamps and date on it. So it's a desired outcome integrated with time of the person I want to become and the community and world I want to live in.
It's interesting because now that you're saying timestamps, I'm thinking about, everything I've been sharing about ADHD. For a lot of people, if there isn't that kind of framework, it doesn't stay front of mind or doesn't become priority, or we might not begin.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's making me think that pendulum swing of how we find balance in managing what we want for ourselves with life as it is, right? So, like, not neglecting family, not neglecting our friendships for our career goal, but how to also have those self boundaries where we're honoring what is real and true and valuable and important for us and taking steps in those directions, right? Without becoming too demanding of ourselves, because that's when we can burn ourselves out doing that.
I will say that one of the questions I have about myself right now I went through, I would say the past 4 years, I've really been like softening, right? Like nothing too demanding. I have 3 children and a lot has changed in my life since having kids, including my body, including my
Yeah.
mind, including
Yeah.
where I live. I up and moved my family from Colorado to the East Coast recently. And and one of my questions I have myself for myself right now, I went through 4 years in the past of I have 3 children. I went through significant loss, right? Like at the tail end of COVID, when I could say out loud, like the timing was not ideal
Yeah.
after not seeing loved ones for so long and losing loved ones. It was like, I know there's no such thing as perfect timing, but to honor a complaint, I would complain about the timing. And I think about the softening, and I think I definitely had to gift myself time to grieve and heal and let it not be linear because it's not, of course. And in that though, at this point I sit here today, I am actually in the question of where is discipline for me now? Where is strong for me now? So when you talk
Yeah.
about that pendulum swing, I swung to the soft side, which I wouldn't have said I was ever really a soft person. Like I did grow up actually very competitive across
Yeah.
the board, so not just in sports. I went for my goals and I loved this like very tactile side of goals with timestamps. And then I was like, oh, I need a break or burnout or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And so I soften, 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 grieve, grieve, grieve. And now I'm in this question of I'm not on the other side. It would just be like in this phase of self I've entered into. I am asking more though of like, where do I want to feel strong again? And not making, I mean, I do think sometimes we make demanding of ourselves or stress to be bad when
Yeah.
not all stress and discipline is
Is
bad. And so that's my question right now for me in goal setting
what I
is,
love is that you're talking about a return to a core part of yourself.
yeah,
And I suppose that, we could grow from strong into something else and not have to return back to it. For you, it sounds like this really natural, at least questioning of, grief, the pandemic, becoming a mother brought me to this new phase of my life.
yeah,
Strong sounds something like it might be central to you, who you are for you. Whereas that softening happened around all of your people, who you are with them, for them, in relation to them. It's
yeah,
interesting. For me, that strong and competitive wouldn't be central to who I am. So if I were asking or demanding myself to be that, that could very easily become imbalancing, right? Me asking me to become what and I should say am not, because we can become many things for ourselves that can be balancing. It'd be interesting. Some of what we're going to ask ourselves for or to do is going to bring us closer to ourselves,
yeah,
and others might actually bring us further from ourselves and create more stress. And stress is not all bad. We need stress to move us, or we don't move.
yeah.
We need it.
To get stronger. I mean, I actually don't think the competitive side of me will be what returns. I would say that, I mean, I can hear like my own comment section. If I were to write about this, people will be like, well, can't soft be strong? And I love language like that. I love when you play with language. And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. But for me, the conversation I'm having was like a softness that was deliciously like a soft cheese. It was creamy and I needed to melt a little bit.
Yeah.
And perhaps even let parts of myself melt away and
Yeah.
surrender. And so when I say strong now, I'm coming back to a strong will and
Mm-hmm.
determination and discipline. I also am like really interested in physical strength for myself. I think so much of the past 10 years of my practice has been softening into yoga, where everything was so competitive and fast and
Mm-hmm.
go. And then I did yoga for 10, 12 years. I did all the yoga teacher trainings on those goal sheets as well. And now it's funny, like I am lifting weights again and it feels so good. And I think that, my husband just read The Power of Now from Eckhart Tolle, which I haven't
Yeah.
read in years, but it's been on our shelf and it was back in the Lululemon library. I remember
Oh,
reading
you
it.
know it was on the list. Yeah, you just made me remember that there was a list.
There was a list.
Good
And I
list.
do think there's power in the now. And I mean, like, not power over in a competitive sense, but power within. And I think my inquiry is like, what does strong mean now? And can I take cues and hints from what it maybe meant when I was 18 or 22, 25? But I definitely am not in that psyche anymore. I
Right.
am so different than who I was at that point. And so even like craving strength and being open to that conversation with myself, it's like what you just asked me in the beginning, like, what does the word goal mean? What does the word strong mean now? And letting
Yes.
it mean something different to everyone, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
And that's so true. The way we each relate to words, when you say discipline, I always share with the women in my groups how almost triggering that word was to me in yoga teacher trainings when we would talk about discipline. And I started in Ashtanga, which is a practice that is
Oh, yes.
daily and the same every day.
Right.
And there's a lot of rules around that, the asana practice, which is one part of it. But I had a really tough relationship with it and actually returned to it during the pandemic. I went through another Ashtanga training and actually came out the other side realizing, no, that's not me. I'm
Yeah.
not that. And that is actually okay. That's not my practice. I don't need to do the same thing every day. That doesn't actually benefit me. I am not less than because I don't. And I worked through my feelings around discipline over the years because of it. There's a part of me that needs discipline, but the word means something to me that feels punitive, feels like an external force, not an internal drive, right? And so I had to reposition that word in my mind, actually kind of set it aside and find my own words for what that could represent for me. And what I feel like you're really talking about here too are our values. Like what is driving what feels important and what's driving the goals. Like this is a value. Like you're reclaiming strength.
Yes.
And that softening, you found something different in yourself than unfortunately you'd had to experience and grief and the feeling that came with that. And that sounds like bringing back in something that's core to you.
Yeah. And I do believe core values have been such a key to my like life practice. Like if you're looking at tools that you have in your tool belt or your own like metaphorical garage, like what tools do you lean on? What tools do you come back to often? And I would say values have been like a lifeline for me, whether I was drenched in comparison when I worked when I was young at Lululemon or on Instagram or fill in the blank, when you go to
Yeah.
a networking event. Values were such a tether for me as someone who at that point in my life could easily chameleon to
Yeah.
make other people happy or fit into a group or fit into a certain frequency to get a promotion. And values became the language, like truly the foundation of language that I was using to speak about my life. And then, of course, using to set goals, which I don't think for a while I had. I think, there's a lot of language around, and I use this language still too, around like writing a vision, writing a little fiction, because that's what it is at
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah.
Imagining, whimsy, reaching, dreaming, and then starting to set goals to get there, which I thought was wonderful. And the thing is, a lot of those goals were set in a performance or egoic or looking good
Oh,
space
yeah. Yeah.
versus like what really matters to me is nature, growth, family. Like, how can these take up space on my
Yeah.
sheet so that me, not the chameleon, but the real me gets to take up space.
Yeah. Well, and that chameleon that you're describing, I think I won't speak for everyone, but I can relate to, and most of the women that I know, because we're looking for what will help us feel. socially safe, successful, what will help us get the promotion because it's not guaranteed. And often we are asked to chameleon ourselves to get these things. And so it was in a way social emotional survival to do those things. It's like, what's the smartest thing for me to do? It might not be the most heart-centered, but it's going to help me feel okay in this world, right? And so now it's like there's this, it's confidence, I think, that has to come, right? Like you get to this place and you're like, well, maybe now I want to do this for me, even if this isn't what others want of me. Maybe people won't love it and I'm going to do it anyway, right? But it is really interesting to like look back on that because I think that it was functional in a way, as dysfunctional as it can be, it was functional. It was like serving a purpose. And yeah, I think that I definitely can relate. Those comparisons will have us go, not just I am less than, but how should I be? What would be better? What should I do to feel less of this feeling I feel when I compare?
Yeah.
And that looking to the future that you were talking about brings back that word possibility that we were talking about. What was her role called, that woman you worked for?
Director of possibility.
Director of possibility. And I can tell you from, a psychological standpoint, a lot of the work that I do with people, whether it's healing trauma or self-limiting beliefs, centers on that. Because if we can't look to the future and see the possibility of something for ourselves, we won't take steps toward it today.
Yeah.
If we don't think it's possible, we'll be stopped in our tracks. And then that's where people are like, why am I stuck? Why do I have these blocks? It's because we haven't yet imagined that we can do the thing and it's possible for us. It's really powerful.
Yeah. I'm reading, I'm not done with it, but I'm reading The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. And he's just a wild man, which I love. I've recently got introduced to him. So I don't know him, as well, but I've listened to podcasts. I have
Yeah.
his book. He's a creative and he's worked with like incredible musical artists, and dude shows up at like huge meetings barefoot and really.
Yeah, he is a surprise to me. I've listened to this book and didn't know anything about him, surprisingly. I feel like he is a life teacher.
Yes.
His book does not center on music. It's so interesting. What are you taking away?
Yeah, I love right now. I have, steps and things that I've been taught and led for goal setting, project management, even, dream creation space for that. And I'm in this phase where he's going through the different steps. And like, the beginning of a project or art is going to be imaginative and dreamlike and play in the land of possibility.
Yeah.
And then you move more into some of that language like logistics, discipline. Does this align to your values, right? And yet, something that is like striking a chord with his entire book, I'm about halfway through, is this notion of like not having to be certain. And I wrote about this a little bit recently around goal setting and uncertainty. And I think it's a slippery slope. This language with goals is like, what do you care about? What's certain? And how do you get there? Like I coach a lot of people are like, cool, what are the steps to get there? And I'm like, well, there's probably 700 different steps. And
It's
we
true.
can only see about 3 right now. And I love Rick's approach is like, well, ask why. And if it does feel impossible, is it because it's never been done, because you've never seen it, or because you've never tried it a different way?
Yeah.
And I really love this approach that's more artistic to goal setting
Hmm.
that allows us to feel or even turn things upside down. The
I love
rituals
it.
that you have to support you, what if you stop them for a whole day? What happens? And can you learn from that? And then can you go back because you're invigorated or you missed it or you love it, or actually then say, what would support me better? And I am in this question of where art and creativity
Yeah.
intersect with goal setting, which are essentially projects. They're like art
Yeah.
projects, if you will. And I feel those conversations, at least in my life, have felt so separate. And I actually think that's
Yes.
for me, where creativity, possibility, impossibility, certainty, uncertainty can actually play in the playground of goals.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's really opening me up.
I love that you're saying this because one of the things that I have found over the years that's so interesting, and or maybe it's not interesting because it's not rare, is that for so many people, I am either creative or an artist or I'm not. But literally everything, like you're saying, is and can be creative and artistic.
Yes.
It's not paint on a canvas that is creativity and artistry. You know, we think creatively to solve all problems. We have these really, most of us, rigid and narrow definitions of creativity. And yet, you know, you think about Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. That is not just for artists, it is for human beings. You know, this practice of morning pages. If you look this up, the people, you know, you've heard of it, but if people haven't, people worldwide are using this practice that was originally included in a book called The Artist's Way. But it helps all of us get beyond blocks that we have in our life, whether they are with creating a piece of artwork or a play or getting out the door to take a walk when that's what we want for ourselves, or getting on the floor and playing with our kids if we feel like we have been too busy to do so. Whatever our block is, this can help. And then you think about, you know, Liz Gilbert's Big Magic. So many people related to and loved that book. And she talked about the concept of ideas that come to us. And it was all about creativity, but it was to everyone for anything in life. If you looked at it through that lens, it didn't have to be just for authors. I wasn't trying to write anything, and that book showed me so much. We have these really narrow views.
Yes. Oh, I just said I loved that book too. I was just thinking about it. I love that one chapter on, putting fear in the back seat and putting courage up front. And I do think being creative, it is an act of bravery because sometimes
Yes.
creativity will call you to do something different, to go against the grain, to swim upstream, right? And that can be hard when you're seeking
Mhm.
validation, a promotion, wanting to fit in, wanting to find where you belong. I think that can be challenging. And I do think back at like when I got promotions for which jobs I got. And the one that I tried so hard for, that I was chameleoning for, was the one I burnt out on. And when I switched into a different department at that time, it's when I started being myself
Oh,
and
so
quit
interesting.
chameleon and said, I can't do this anymore. I have to change it up. So much of my life was actually, dare I say, like falling apart because I was living for something beyond me that wasn't me, right? Like
Yeah.
trying to fit this mold and chameleon and check all their boxes without checking any of mine. And
Hmm.
so it was fascinating to look at like when you actually get creative, there is a place where you're going to have to stand up for yourself, fight for yourself, be brave, you know, surrender.
Hmm.
Let go of things you thought you needed or who you thought you were. I thought I'd
Yes.
be in that specific job with that job title in that department forever. It's what I went to college for. Really checked a lot of the linear pathways. Oh, that feels so good when we assume oh, it's a linear path, I'll walk it. And of course, the edges of grief and sorrow and joy and happiness are where so much of our expansion and growth happens. And I think to where I was most scared and I was leaving something that felt like the identity and everything I'd written down on my goal sheet
Oh,
and
so hard.
exploded it.
Yep.
A lot of life began to fall into, right, the becoming, this new iteration of self that was more truthful. Could I have
Yeah.
rushed that process though, Ashley? Nope. I don't think I could
No.
have done it 2 years earlier in my 20s. I think I had to.
Yeah.
go through the mess.
Or
To,
you'd still be people pleasing and chameleoning and fitting into molds today, right? In a way that is the blessing, the hardship. It showed you this doesn't work for you. This isn't who you are. And then you have to go, well, who am I? What am I?
yes. And I don't think we're meant to do that shit alone. Like my
Good
partner,
call.
such an intricate part. My friends were an intricate part of that. Of like, I remember just things people would say to me that were like, either the signs you see or you don't see. As I love the Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist book. Like the signs are always there. Are we seeing them? And it's in another book too. Which one? Like Midnight Library is another good one. Anyways, um, and I remember people being like, "Yo, who are you now? You aren't the same," which is never possible. But if these are people that really care and love for me that I want in my life, am I willing to listen to them? And sometimes I think we're in a place of like, burn it down, get new friends. And I'm like, wow, wait a second. Do people love me? And do I appreciate what they're saying? And there was a deep listening at that point in my life.
Yeah.
And I really can say I would not have realized it in the time that I did
Yeah.
without community.
It meant staying in those friendships, even though they were challenging you, right?
100%, 100%. And
It's really nice.
I have ended friendships that we weren't serving each other on either side. I've been there too.
Yeah.
But this wasn't that conversation. This was more of like, oh, these people know me and love me and have met this burnt out side of me and are asking, is this what you want? No
Yeah.
one was forcing me to change. And they actually, though, what was really cool actually is these friends and my partner was like, is this what I want? So it wasn't just like them loving me into, is this what you really want? They had to then love themselves enough to recognize, is this what they want in our friendship? Because
Yeah.
it wasn't showing up anymore for them. And so I just am obsessed with community right now and people. And they don't have to be best friends either. You can meet someone
Mhm.
at the library and have a 5-second exchange that can change your life. And I don't think you have to be an extrovert for this to happen. I am an extrovert, so it lends itself well.
To
I
making
don't,
friends with the local librarian, which you have.
I don't extrovert time. I can be quiet now.
Mhm.
Um, but I do think that there is this wiring. And that's where I think Instagram can be neat. I connected with an
Yeah.
old friend just last week and we were connecting through books and it was cool, like to be in that space of, oh, wow, you're doing your life over there. I'm doing my life over here. And our lives are totally different from when we knew each other at
Yeah.
age, whatever it might have been. And so, yeah, the nodes of connection as a reflection for how we live and set goals is really fascinating to me. Of
Yes, and I think that, what you're talking about, this undercurrent is not avoiding discomfort and allowing that vulnerability that is like the cornerstone of the work that you do now in your groups of women. That if we can allow ourselves to be uncomfortable with each other and not dodge it, not run away from it, whether or not these are our closest friends, it opens something up that allows so much healing and connection. And it's hard to even describe for people what it is like to just have people hear you, not even have to respond. There's just something there.
yeah, I agree. There was a woman, I don't know if she was in our group, Ash, when we did Vulnerability Club, but I remember her speaking up around like knowing where her safe spaces were to then be uncomfortable. And I was like, wow, that's gorgeous to have spaces to go practice
Yeah.
being uncomfortable because you can never control it, right?
Yeah.
Like there will be instances where we are not in a place of comfort and we're being challenged. And
Yeah.
I do reckon with like the restoration, which I'm sure you work on a lot with your clients, and this is something I've been exploring in myself, is like the restoration plan we have so we can ride that edge of comfort and discomfort, whether we're in a safe place with loved ones who can hold that space for us or be in that space with us. Dare I say, even the scary part when it is with loved ones and the space isn't held, there's obviously
Yeah.
different.
I think as you're saying this, I'm like reminded that for most people, loved ones aren't the first and foremost safest. And that's where, learning to or having the opportunity to be held by others and be seen and to be heard, and then to go, right, this is what I need. And it's okay, I need this and to want this. How do I learn how to ask for that or to tell someone what I need? Because it's not taught to us. We aren't taught that. I think about that period of time when you were describing as that softening. It's like feeling all of these feelings that you probably hadn't had before. And there's not really a textbook on that, right? And I'm sure you've read a lot of books. We can read a lot of books and still not know what to do with the information or how to just feel, because it's not just feeling. That's an oversimplification of something for most humans feel like a threat, to be in front of people, to be surrounded by people. Retreats are a major example of this. Things happen in retreats that are so interesting. The level of connection you'll feel with people you spend 3 days with it's insane. It makes no sense. And yet it happens every time.
It's an interesting science experiment for sure.
It's like strangers can become the safest people so fast because it's like they don't have an expectation of you and they don't have any prior knowledge of you. And so when you show up, they don't think you're going to show up in any certain way. And whatever you do in that space time, whether it's, in one group or on a retreat, it's like it begins and ends there. There's something really nice to being able to just go and like be yourself as you are in that moment.
Yeah.
Not any part of you trying to perform for your best friend so they don't worry about you, or for your mom so she doesn't worry about you. It's interesting.
Yes. Yes, it is. I do think, it is, I think it's so fascinating, like you just said about like strangers in safe places, because they don't hold any expectations. They don't hold on to any of your past baggage. They don't bring it to
Yeah.
any conversations, which I think is fascinating. And you can really explore different parts of yourself because you're not already being put in a box. And
Yes.
I think that's cool. We're all so dynamic. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes we forget this, whether it's because of our career label,
Yeah.
parent label, partner label, friend label, whatever people have placed you in. There's a really beautiful book by Pema Chodron called Living Beautifully with Uncertainty and Change. And she
Ooh.
talks about these boxes, how we love the boxes. Like, okay, there's Ashley in that box. This is what she does. It's kind of funny.
Yes,
Boxes right now.
we are.
There's Jacki, and she's loud and extroverted. And what was tricky, Ash, for me was when I went through that softening and grief, I wasn't loud and gregarious and extroverted.
Yeah.
And it really rocked people. It rocked me too. And and I find that we're going to go through that. And I've been thinking about this a lot with like the experience of online and what we choose to showcase.
Mhm.
Or similar to what we talked about in the beginning with like looking at all these goal sheets that kind of started to sound similar. It's okay. It's wonderful actually to be inspired by one another, to be around like-minded people, to feel this like rush
Yeah.
of energy. And I do think though there's a place where whether it's with, like you said, strangers in a group setting, inspired by a book you're reading,
Yeah.
um, a random interaction with someone in line for coffee, where we can stay open to something completely different.
Yeah.
And I will tell you though, I was not open to something completely different when I was navigating grief or softening. I was like, I don't like it. I don't like this. I don't
Yeah.
have it feel. I don't like there was a point, and I say this with vulnerability and love for myself, where I was like, I don't like me like this.
Oh,
And there wasn't acceptance there. But I think
Yeah.
that's okay to rub against parts of ourselves that are
Yeah.
showcasing and
Yes.
recognize what I just said earlier, that we're very dynamic. You know, my grief took hold for longer than I thought it would, as I'm sure people can relate to.
That's something else you'd like to put in a box, right?
Oh,
We all would.
we
It's
all
interesting. It sounds like that period of time actually, did it feel like you were open, but not by choice, and you couldn't close it up? It's like that where it almost feels like we can feel it all. You're feeling it all, you know? I think it's also interesting we're both two extroverts who moved to Maine and completely severed ourselves from our extrovert life. Like there's something so interesting in like phases
yes,
of life and change and what feels right, you know?
yes, yes. You know, it's so beautiful, like how our conversation keeps cycling, because I can hear myself when I was in grief being like, I just want to go back to how I was before, or the language you use a little bit like a returning. And I'm like, oh, I'll wait till this is done. And then I'll offer my events again or my hikes again. I used to
Yeah.
lead hikes every month in the mountains, right? And moving to Maine, this really, for some people in my life, this random move. I will say it was random to me. Maine was never in my vision, in my goals, in my stratosphere until I came here, right? And then it showed up and was like, I will never leave until you come here. And I was like, okay. And
Oh, wow.
it's fascinating, right? Because like we think we can see it and vision it, but there's so many places we haven't been. There's so many people we haven't
Yeah.
met. Um, so yeah, to that point of like the softening, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go back now. Kind of probably common like a lot of us, like after the pandemic, or if you've had children, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
let's go back to when there
Yeah.
was this body, this brain, this schedule. And I think that was part of my non-acceptance too, was okay, while there are parts of me that are extroverted and gregarious and still exist, perhaps that personality, that exact being has shed that skin. And can I lean into the uncertainty, dare I even say, like the impossibility that I probably would have thought of then, of being more quiet, of being softer, of being more introspective?
Yeah.
And it's really been interesting. I would say that's been God, I shouldn't say largest change, because we've all probably had many, but um, I think it was the most mature I've ever handled reality. And one of a somatic therapist I actually worked with on grief said that, maturity is your ability to respond to reality. And that's just been like rocking me. And I'm like,
Ooh,
oh,
I like that. That's an interesting definition.
beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful.
And it's so interesting because all I can think about as you're saying this is like, what you were used to didn't work for what you were experiencing. And in a way, you were forced to figure out what would work for that phase of your life. And it was in the figuring out of what you needed and what worked for you to care for yourself that was the maturing, right? It's like figuring it out. It's not so much the knowing, but the figuring it out. I think at least.
Yes, yes, yes. I agree with that. I love that
Because
you
we
said.
can certainly like rip the past and will it to be what it was. And it's the letting go of that and allowing ourselves to figure out how to be in what is right now that I think is what matures us.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And it's so fascinating because, you and I are in Maine, and someone even asked me, like, what's this look like? I'm like, oh, we don't know. Like, we don't know how long
Yeah.
we'll be here. She's like, oh, I don't know where our next move will be and what's permanent. I'm like, oof, I don't even know if I have access to the word permanent anymore. During COVID, I thought about getting a perm, which is short for
Oh my gosh, I love this so much. Not what I would have expected you to say, Jackie. This is fantastic. And now I kind of hope you do it.
language. I was like wanting the permed bangs. Maybe I'd watch an 80s show.
Wait, like, is there a new version of the perm, or is this the same thing my sister had in sixth
Same.
grade?
No, no, it's the exact same. I got it every time my aunt came to visit. And she had the curls and the smell and the thing. And you can't go swimming. Just
Oh
legally
my
blonde,
God,
whatever.
this is fantastic.
So anyways, I thought I'd get a perm. And I didn't go get a perm, obviously. But what I like about the language of a perm, because obsessed with my grandmother, and I remember when her perm would grow out. So she'd have these like ringlets, and then at the roots was this like straight hair. And I was like, oh my God, even permanents are temporary.
Yes,
Like in
they are.
but that's so in life because you're going to grow out
Yes.
what you put in. And
Yeah.
so I'll get a perm eventually. My mom totally had one. I remember having a
This is
picture when,
amazing. I mean, listen, I can't wait for this.
yeah,
I want
one
to see
day
it.
we'll see. Um, but yeah, such a beautiful sentiment to our goal setting conversation and values is like knowing what matters so that you
Mhm.
can ask what you want for
Yeah.
yourself and for your community while remaining open that nothing's permanent and change and uncertainty are going to also hold keys for us.
Yeah.
And listen, I can say that all day. I'm no expert in it. It is
Mhm.
a practice for me,
Well,
right?
so you have to say it every day, right? Nothing is certain. And dare we say anything is possible, right? It's an interesting dichotomy to hold those things side by side, you know? There's a part of us that will want certainty. There's a part of us that will doubt possibility. There's a part of us that won't want to be open and vulnerable, that will want to be able to be in control and to contain and to know what it will feel like, or know we are not going to go in that direction, which is an interesting part of setting goals. You know, how do we set goals that we can get our whole self on board with?
Knowing that that might change too in a
Yeah.
year, 6 days. Oh,
And allowing that, right? That's information. It's like, okay, this is not what I need now. Noted. Where do I go now? What do I need now? But to
yes.
actually be in the practice of asking, I think that's a pretty interesting thing. You know, you can put your time stamp on it and you start moving in that direction. And when you don't need that, or when it doesn't work for you, then you know. But you won't know until you do it, which is, you know, taking steps toward the thing we want for ourselves. We won't know until we try it. Which is
Yeah.
why I love thinking about you changing your major every year. I can get on a soapbox about our college system. Like, how are we supposed to know what we want to do when we've not yet done it? Makes absolutely no sense. And so you
Well,
should change your major every year. Get an idea of how those things all sound and feel, and then you know, because you have to feel it. How does this feel?
okay, wait. I know we're coming at time, but something just really like lightning bolted into my brain that I have to say out loud. Okay. Oh my God, I have so many thoughts. So we'll probably just have to do a part two. But
Okay, good.
there's this whole version of like toxic positivity. I'm sure you've heard of it, and I'm sure we've all experienced it. I'm
I
sure
think I used to be it.
I was going to many things in my days. And so we were talking about possibility and being open to what's possible, right? Or this language that you and I can try on directors of possibility. I wonder if there's toxic possibility, and just stay with me, because what if we've only made possibility to be the continuation, the achievement, the yes, the success?
Yeah.
But what if directing possibility is also being open to failure, change, disappointment, and I don't love the language of regret, but I've been thinking about it a lot lately.
Yeah.
The possibilities of our whole life, not just the possibility of it working out, because oftentimes when things don't work out, we learn from it. It's another
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
change course, or we're like, thank God. I mean, I will tell you what, I had nutrition as one of my majors, and I put an aluminum muffin pan in the
I
microwave.
knew you were gonna say it. I knew you were gonna say it.
Right. And oh man, the teacher was like,
Oh, this is the
"We're lucky
best.
you didn't burn this place down." And it was great though, because I really think those were some of those moments where I
I
was
love
like,
this.
I don't want to be doing this. I don't care.
There you
about
go. I don't care. Well, I think we can redefine your regret. Like regret is figuring out that we were wrong about what we thought we wanted.
and we can and let's try again.
Let's do
And
something
so,
different.
I mean, that's just a huge lightning bolt for me. It
Yes. Oh, that's so interesting. Just expanding on it, you made me immediately think about how people can get caught up in manifestation, which isn't a good or a bad or a right or a wrong thing, but part of that ego that it's like, well, I should want the the bigger thing, the next thing. We used to call those goals big, hairy, audacious goals, and it would make me think my goals had to be, so what's big, you know?
yeah,
And maybe they don't have to be big. Maybe I don't have to have everything. And I think that,
the definition of big
yeah,
changes.
I still do the 10-year visualization more than one time a year, but I've completely changed the way I do it and the way I guide it to be all about how do you want to feel in your skin, and I'm describing this visualization that we used to do at Lululemon, and you to just imagine yourself in your life 10 years from now, which is a really interesting practice to do when you're talking about, what do we want and what is possible. But we can have ego enter that conversation so fast to say, you should do this, you should want this.
Yeah.
And and I think that's it. I think that that's the toxic possibility right there.
And like, what about, I didn't know that I'd want to move to Maine until I
Mhm.
went to Maine. And so a vision I had written, so many visions, Ashley, I wrote failed.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have vision boards probably still somewhere in here. Yeah. But you know what? It's like, oh my God, that's just not what I was meant to have or do. And maybe I thought I needed that to be a certain way or to feel a certain way. And maybe I either don't need that or I can have that without having a thing
Yeah.
that is physical and outside of me, that externalized stuff.
I know. It's fascinating. I mean, even one of my visions was like, I'll live in Colorado, which I did. And
Yeah.
that 10-year vision, I did move there from California. And then, I've pulled the rug out from under myself and moved to Maine. And sometimes Chris and I will look at each other and be like, what are we doing here? What's happening? And it's quite fun because there's so much uncertainty in a beautiful way. But I wonder too, like the vision that I had perhaps of living in Colorado, it doesn't mean that I won't go back, which I've told
Mm.
like sister and people. And my vision can still happen, most likely not the way that I thought, because I had no idea I'd live on the East Coast and then whatever's next. And that's what I think can bog us down of like, well, I
Yeah.
don't know what's going to happen. Like, and we can't.
Right. Well, and that goes back to the certainty and uncertainty. Sure, we can create these for what we want and how we want to feel.
Yeah.
And we might think we know what that's supposed to look like or going to look like, but we can't be certain about that. And not getting that doesn't mean a failure, actually. It's maybe it doesn't look the way we thought it was going to look, but what was it? What was it about on a deeper level? Do I have that? Do I need that still?
My move. I did throw a couple vision boards away lovingly. Like it was,
Yeah.
they were stacking and dusting, and I wasn't referring to them. I think I did keep one. But it also then makes space for like, oh, maybe I'll stack a few more
Yeah.
now that I have space instead of being like, oh, I already did that, you know?
Yes.
Let's try
Yeah. And
again.
to do it from this energy of just open, no clue what you're doing, I think that'd be a good vision board. But, in honor of that not being true, you are doing a lot of really interesting things. And I wonder if there are things that you'd like to share with people because you have all kinds of offerings.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's one thing to bring it back to like values. Like you can always be aligning to your values in the now and of course in your future. But that's a great way to stay present is like, am I still saying yes to things that matter that then create a life?
Yeah.
So things I'm
Yes.
doing that align to my values. I definitely am doing retreats,
Whoop, whoop.
and rebelling against loneliness and bringing us together, which can be brave. I think everyone coming on my retreat that starts this week,
It's this week.
that's Thursday.
Oh my gosh.
They're not coming with anyone they know.
I
Mask.
love that most.
And they're gonna
I
be
love
there.
a retreat where I know no one. That's my favorite kind of retreat.
It's true. And then, so my retreats, and I'll have more of those being announced. And then I have one-on-one coaching that I love doing. I love digging deep with people on exactly this,
Yeah.
visions and goals, and how to bring a project to life with communication and boundaries. Projects being your art projects, which are definitely another word for goals. And
Yes.
as Ashley has experienced, I have vulnerability club, so it's now on a quarterly basis. So I'm wrapping up winter edition, and then we'll move into spring. So I'll open that up after my retreat
And
and
I'll be there. I'm so ready for it. I love them.
just have a spot for you. And we explore different portals to vulnerability as Ashley's experienced, whether it's music, writing, yelling, talking to one another, on Zoom, one-on-one video in breakout rooms. We have guest speakers. We had a woman come speak actually last week about fertility, but not what you think, not like
Hmm.
more living a fertile life
Oh,
that is soil to be planting seeds and
see,
how
we've got to redefine all of these words: creativity,
fertility.
fertility,
That's right.
artistry.
We're
Psh,
not just birthing children, we're birthing businesses, we're birthing
yeah.
ideas, we're birthing community at all times. So I love V Club. I call it V Club. And then my retreats and my one-on-ones. And then I have a Substack. Ash is on there. That's
Yeah.
where I write. I sent Ashley a preview of, oh, it went live today, actually. It's a new goal setting.
Awesome.
It is like a creative goal setting post that I called Goal Like a Woman because I wrote it. I am a woman, so I wrote it from my perspective of things I haven't learned, and I am
Yeah.
learning goal setting. Uh,
Hmm.
and more so, and I mentioned this in the writing lovingly, when we worked at Lululemon, it was Brian Tracy, a man, playing in my car. And
Yeah.
then it was the goal book written by another man. And I was like, oh my God, while the goal work was being led to us, I would say mostly by women in
Yeah. It
Lululemon,
was.
it was referenced to a certain style of leadership. And I do think there's such a uniqueness to goal setting that has been missing in the conversation for me. So that's what I
Yeah.
was writing about, what you shared. Like, how does this feel?
Absolutely.
And what does
Yeah.
it look like for community? Where's uncertainty in goal setting? Because it's got to be in there. It's got to be in there.
Yes.
So yeah, in my Substack, it's essays and journal prompts, and I write haiku, and it's a newer exploration of writing for me. So I
Mhm.
wouldn't say it's very imperfect, which I'm
Oh, I love it.
navigating like what my themes are and what
Yeah,
I want
everything's
to.
imperfect. And Jackie's newsletter is like, seriously, I'm not lying. This is like the only newsletter I actually look forward to opening because
Oh,
she writes and shares and her thoughts and feelings that are just so relatable. And I'm going to link the Substack so everyone can find it, as well as Jackie's website. You can see all of the offerings to check out what she's got coming up and check out V Club and upcoming retreats is announced. But check out the Substack. It's a treat. And by the way, I still am writing every single morning since we started V Club. I started writing haikus with Jacki, and it was such a trip. It was just so funny. I was just writing funny haikus. And now I'm writing meditations for my community and poetry, and it's just the best way to start my day. And I am grateful.
I'm so happy to hear. Like what portal works for you, and that's what we explore is like different ways in and the ones that we need now.
Yeah,
Love it. I'm
me
so
too.
grateful for the space.
I'm so glad for this, and I can't wait to have you back.
I'll
I
be back.
already know it. There's too much to say.
Can't wait to see you in Maine when we
I
can.
know. We're going to do it in real life,
Can't wait.
but we're both just in our little hermit lands currently. So we'll branch out. Next event, I'm there.
I love being a little cocoon goo right now.
I am into it.
All right, Ashley.
All
Thank
right. I'll see you soon. Bye, Jacki. This has been another episode of In Our Skin. Thank you so much for watching or listening along. Make sure to subscribe or follow so that you don't miss anything. You can follow the links in the show notes to connect to one-on-one coaching, women's circles, workshops, retreats, and more. And this month, you can join us for the Women's Workshop on March 31st. Sign up by March 25th for your free gift in the mail.
If you're interested in changing your relationship with food, the doors are still open, and there is a special 40% off sale for the Course Plus sessions with me. If you want to find out more about Jacki, check out the show notes to see about coaching, retreats, and more. And until next time, take care.